Now we're going to take a look at Touch Too Much. The intro starts off like this. Tons of fun, all on the low E string. So what makes this interesting, even though it's one note played on one string? It's the accents. This is where we play certain notes louder than other notes. So I'm playing entirely eighth notes on the low E string. Eighth notes will be counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But I'm going to place these accents in certain places. Starting off on the downbeat of 1. The next accent will be on the and of 2. So 1 and 2 and. And then the next accent will be placed on the downbeat of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And that'll take us through the first measure. In the next measure, we're going to accent on the and of 1. 1 and. And then we'll accent on the downbeat of 3 and the downbeat of 4. So the second measure would sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And this is a two-measure phrase. So let's play these two measures together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now let's play that 2 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. At this point, the vocals come in. So the verse will start off with a measure with that open low E string that sounds like this. Accenting on the downbeat of 1 and the and of 2 only. Okay? So now we're not going to accent as much. We don't want to get in the way of the vocals. After that measure of E, we're going to play the note C, 3rd fret of the A string, continuing with eighth notes. A measure of A, open A string, and one more measure of A. So this is a 4-measure phrase that we'll play 2 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're into the pre-chorus. So here we're going to play some accents, starting off with this phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for the pre-chorus, we're going to start with a C power chord. 3rd fret A string, 5th fret D string, 5th fret G string, and we'll strike this on the downbeat of 1, the and of 3, and the and of 4. So in context, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll do it once again, this time without talking. 1, 2, 3, 4. So following that measure with the C5, we have a measure where we don't play anything, and then we'll have an A power chord, and we'll use the same accents. So this is the 3rd measure of the pre-chorus. In the 4th measure, we'll have a rest, so we're not going to play anything in the 4th measure. 5th measure goes back to C and goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to accent here on the downbeat of 1, the downbeat of 2, the and of 3, and the and of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next measure, we'll stay with the C5. We're going to accent on the and of 2, and then the downbeat of 3, downbeat of 4. So that measure would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Now we're going to move up to a D5 chord. We're going to play this phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. starting off, we'll accent on the downbeat of 1, the downbeat of 2, the and of 3, and the and of 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Now when we get there, we're going to hold that D chord into the next measure, accent on the and of 2, the downbeat of 3, and the downbeat of 4. So the final two measures where we get to this D5 chord will sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're into the chorus. So I know all this counting can be a little bit confusing. If you're familiar with the song, you might be able to hear these accents a little bit better. So I highly recommend listening to the original track. But let's go back now and play the entire pre-chorus. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Now everything we've learned so far is what Angus is playing. As we know, there's two guitar players in AC/DC. Here's Malcolm's part. Starts off like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So while Angus is playing these single notes, Malcolm is playing an E5 power chord, open E string, 7th fret A string, 9th fret D string, accenting on the downbeat of 1 for each of these four measures. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Then the verse comes in. We'll continue with the E5 power chord in 8th notes, followed by C5, 3rd fret A string, 5th fret D string. We'll switch to an A5 chord, but we're going to play the open A string, which will give us time to shift positions and play the A5 chord here. 7th fret D string along with the open A string, 9th fret on the G string. And then we're going to play this riff. So here I'm forming an A chord, 9th fret on the G string, 10th fret B string, 9th fret on the high E string, and then I'm going to add the 10th fret of the high E string, which will make the chord A sus. And I'm going to pivot back and forth between the A sus and the A chord. So starting off A sus, and then A 2 times, repeat that, ending with A sus. So here's the first four measures of the verse. 1, 2, 3, 4. Back to the E5 chord for a measure. C5, A5, and now we're going to riff between that A sus and the A chord, but we're going to end with A rather than A sus. So we start off A sus once, A 2 times, A sus once, A 3 times. And that's the verse before the pre-chorus. So let's put these 8 measures together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we're into the pre-chorus. Whereas Angus was playing those stabs with the power chords, Malcolm just continues to play 8th notes. Starting off with a C5 chord, we'll accent in the first measure on the and of 3 and the and of 4. And then we'll just continue C5 without the accents for the second measure. Just playing 8th notes the whole time. Now we're going to play an A5 chord, and in this measure, the third measure of the pre-chorus, we'll accent on the and of 3, and of 4. And in the fourth measure, we continue that A5 with no accents. So here's the first four measures of the pre-chorus. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to repeat the first two measures. And now we're going to move to D. We'll play a D5 chord 2 times. An additional 2 times, accenting on the and of 3 and of 4. Followed by the 5th fret of the A string, and then the D5 chord 2 more times. Basically 2 measures of D5. And then we're into the chorus. So let's play these 8 bars of the pre-chorus that Malcolm plays. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're into the chorus. Both guitars are going to play the same part during the chorus. It goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. The chorus continues, but let's take a look at what we've done up to this point. We're going to start on the downbeat of 2. We're actually going to rest on the downbeat of 1. The bass plays on the downbeat of 1, but not the guitars. When we do come in, we're going to play an E5 power chord, open low E string, 2nd fret of the A string. We'll strike that chord 3 times before playing a G chord, a G power chord for 1 measure. Followed by an A power chord for 1 measure, to a C5 power chord, now some single notes, 2nd fret to the open A string, to a D5 power chord. And that's a 4-measure phrase. We're going to repeat that 4-measure phrase, but on the second time, when we do the repeat, we're not going to rest on the downbeat of 1. That's just to get us into the chorus. So let's play the first 8 bars now. 1, 2, 3, 4, rest. All right, moving right along. After the first 8 bars of the chorus, we're going to continue with a bar of E, followed by a bar of G, and these are all power chords. Followed by a bar of A, and then C to D. Now we're going to rest on the downbeat of 1 of this next measure, followed by 2 hits with an E chord. Strike that 1 more time before playing a G chord, and then we rest. And that's where Bon Scott says, touch too much. Following that phrase, we're then going to build up on an A chord for 1 measure, just playing 8th notes. We get out of the chorus by playing D, A, A, D, A, A, D, A. Back to an E5 chord. This time I'm going to move up, playing the E chord like Malcolm plays. Open low E string, 7th fret on the A, 9th fret on the D string. Build up for 2 measures. And then we're into the next verse. So that's a pretty long chorus. Let's go back now and put all of this together. I'll count you in, but remember we're going to rest on the downbeat of 1 the first time around. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So after the first chorus, we're now into the second verse. This is the first time that we're going to play a verse with the full band. Before we were just doing some accents that kind of set up that big first chorus. So the second verse is different. I think we should take a look at it. We'll start off with the part that Angus is playing, which goes like this. Here's the first 4 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just playing some whole notes here. Once again, these are all power chords. E, C, A. Now we'll strike the open A string before playing D 2 times, A 2 times. Next 4 bars are identical. Now we're into the pre-chorus. We'll play a C chord, 2, 3, 4, to an A chord, back to C, and to a D chord. And then we're into the chorus. So here's Angus's part during the pre-chorus. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. Now we're going to take a look at what Malcolm is playing during this verse. He starts off with this chord, which is an E minor chord, open low E string, 7th fret on the A string, 5th fret on the D string. Followed by a bar of C, bar of A, and then the accents A, D, D, A, A. Now he's back to an E power chord, followed by C, back to A, and then the accents A, D, D, A, A. And then we're into the pre-chorus. So here's what Malcolm is playing during the second verse. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now Malcolm just bashes it out with 8th notes. Starting off with the C chord. Once again, these are just power chords. That was 1 measure. We'll do that an additional measure. Next 2 measures are an A chord, 2 measures of C, 2 measures of D. And then we're into the chorus. So here's Malcolm's part during the pre-chorus. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, well now we're going to take a look at the solo. The solo is in the key of E and starts off with this phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to start by bending a whole step from the 14th fret of the G string, then grab 12 on the B string, and then play 12 on the B along with 12 on the E string. Now we're going to bend a whole step from the 14th fret of the G string and play 12 on the B string along with 12 on the E string, and we'll strike that double stop 2 times. Play that 3-note phrase again. Play that 3-note phrase once again. So far we've done this. Now back to the first 3 notes of the solo, a whole step bend from the 14th fret of the G string, followed by 12 B, and then 12 on the B, 12 on the E string. Now we'll bend a whole step from the 14th fret of the G string, strike 12 B along with 12 on the high E, and play those 2 notes 2 times. Back to our first phrase, a whole step bend from the 14th fret of the G string, followed by 12 B and then 12 B along with 12 E. So far we've done this. Now we'll bend a whole step from the 14th fret of the G string, play 12 B along with 12 on the high E. Now we'll play 14 on the B string, 15 on the high E string. We'll bend the 14th fret of the B string up a half step and then back down, followed by 12 on the top 2 strings, 14 on the G string, 14 on the B string, followed by the G string, 12, 14, 12. And that's our first phrase. So let's go back and put that together nice and slow. And here's the next phrase. Whole step bend from the 14th fret of the G string, then play 12 B along with 12 on the high E, play that double stop 2 times. Now bend a whole step from 15 B and then 12 on the high E 2 times. Play those 3 notes an additional 3 times. And here's the phrase we've just done. And here's the final phrase of the solo. We'll start off with some double stops. That's where we play 2 notes at once. 19 of the high E string along with 20 of the B string. Play those 2 notes together 3 times, followed by 21 on the G string. Repeat that phrase. Back to that double stop 2 times. 21 G, and then back to the double stop. And you can bend up slightly on the 20th fret of the B string, between a quarter step and a half step. Just give it kind of a bluesy feel. So that phrase, once again. And then the whole band catches this lick, which you should also know. So that's an E5 chord, followed by the 3rd fret of the low E string, A5, open A string, back to the 3rd fret of the low E, open A string, followed by a B5 chord, single note C, 3rd fret of the A string, A5 chord, open A string along with the 2nd fret of the D string, and then back to an E5 chord, open low E string, 2nd fret A string. All right, so let's go back now to the start of the solo and piece all of that together. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, well, there's the solo, and there you have the highlights from Touch Too Much. Have some fun with that one.